There's a third oil tanker that the Coast Guard is actually pursuing, and they are not agreeing to be boarded. Now, I didn't know that a ship could not agree to be boarded. I thought if you sent the Navy SEALs out there, they just fast rope down onto the deck of your ship and you are boarded. But apparently the Coast Guard going after this ship and telling them to heave to. The ship is not playing ball with them, and so they have, as far as I can tell, they have not yet boarded that ship, but they're chasing it and they're going to seize the ship. Now, that particular ship is a let's see here that where I'm trying I think it's called the Bella one. There's some confusion on the news about the name of this ship, and because we just seized another ship 2 days ago and that ship was flying a false flag as well. It was not a sanctioned oil vessel, but the oil on the vessel was sanctioned, and so we used that as an excuse to take the ship, and I think that's legit if you ask me. That's a legitimate thing to do. We knew for a fact that ship, even though it wasn't sanctioned, it was operating legally with insurance and everything, that it was involved in the shadow fleet because it was doing ship-to-ship transfers offshore, which is where they mix oil together, so you can't tell where it came from. They were delivering oil to China and Iran and things like that. So we knew that they were a bad actor and we went in and took that ship over. That was the 20th. Now, this third pursuit, it's an actual sanctioned oil tanker that is in international waters that's coming to Venezuela. And apparently, there's no oil on board, but we are taking it. We're going to rest the ship, so to speak, and then impound it so that they can't load oil on it and make money from that. The Trump administration is just saying, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep taking these. And there's a bunch of sanctioned oil vessels, dark fleet vessels, that are off the coast of Venezuela right now, like in port. And they're afraid to leave. They're afraid to go anywhere. And this creates a huge problem for Venezuela because Venezuela's oil pumps are pumping out oil all the time. And you can't just shut those things off and then turn them on when you need them again. If you shut them off, getting them started back up is a very expensive, very highly technical and difficult process to do. That same problem that Russia's having up in the north. So, if Venezuela runs out of storage capacity for their oil, they're going to have to turn their pumps off, and that could essentially shut down the Venezuelan oil industry. Right now, they have about 5 to 7 days worth of storage available to them, and 5 days if it's only on land, 7 if they use the day bunker onto the ships that are already in harbor. But those ships can't go anywhere or they're going to get taken by the US. So once they run out of additional storage space, they're in big trouble. Now, every one of these ships that the United States takes is about a $70 to $80 million hit to Venezuela, something like that. The first one we took, the Skipper, had 1.8 million barrels of Venezuelan, they call it Mary crude oil. And that stuff's typically valued about 70 to 80 million based on the current market conditions. That uses a discounted price of about $4 to $45 a barrel because that crude trades at a significant discount because of the sanctions and because of the quality of the oil. It's just very low quality oil. They've got a lot of it, but it's not very good. So, if the ship is carrying 1.8 million of barrels, then that would be just under $80 million in revenue. And that is a direct loss to the Venezuelan government. It translates directly, because once they put that oil on a ship, all of Venezuela's overhead costs have already been taken. They've already been spent. So that is then every dollar they would get for that oil would recoup their costs and give them a profit. So by doing this, that takes about a day's worth of Venezuela's government revenues off the table for each one of these tankers we take. And I mean, so you could go, we've got a big job ahead of us, because that means we'd have to take 365 tankers before Venezuela would be completely dead in the water for a year. But that's not exactly how it works, because every time we take one of these tankers, it is a huge dissuasion to other tankers to come anywhere near the coast of Venezuela. There are lots of tankers in the pipeline out there. There's actually it's very interesting because a lot of experts thought that by seizing these tankers, we would cause the price of oil to spike. That would help Russia in their war against Ukraine. In reality, the price of oil has gone up like $2 a barrel, like nothing. And that's because there is so much oil in the pipeline right now as far as on the ocean, currently transiting and important places trying to get loaded or unloaded or whatever. There is more oil on the market today than there has ever been. This also gives the lie to that environmentalist trope that we're running out of oil. We're not running out of oil. The proven reserves of oil that we have right now is more than 3,000 years worth of oil at the current rate of usage. So, we could literally use as much oil as we possibly could for the next 3,000 years and we'd still not run out. That's if we stop looking for new oil today. So nevertheless, there's a ton of oil that's already in transit that's already out there. So it's not going to be an immediate hit in terms of hurting China or Iran, or somebody like that. It is hurting Cuba very badly, though, because Cuba relies almost exclusively on oil from Venezuela, and they're a very small country, and so one oil tanker going to Cuba would run their country for a couple of months, maybe. I don't know, and since we just took the Skipper, which was on its way to Cuba, their whole economy may collapse in the near future if we keep this up, and that might hasten the end of the government in Cuba as well. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the direct revenue loss of these tankers, as well 1.8 million barrels, is actually about 2 days worth of average exports from Venezuela. But like I said, the more of these tankers that we take, the fewer tankers will come, and Venezuela will have to start shutting down its oil wells and turning back its production to the point where it's going to cost them a whole lot more than that. And we're not going to have to take 400 tankers to make it happen. So, I think that the Trump administration's doing exactly the right thing here. Now Lindsey Graham, agreed with me on this. Here's a little snippet of an interview he gave yesterday greater than week in a call with me. President Trump didn't rule out the possibility of a war with Venezuela. Overnight, we saw the United States intercept another oil tanker. President Trump promised to get America, as you know, out of foreign wars, not start new ones. Would he be going against that promise if he did in fact go to war with Venezuela? Greater than absolutely not. If you're an American and you want Maduro to stay in power, man, have you lost your way? President Trump promised to secure our nation from the scourge of narco-drug trafficking. The kingpin in our backyard is Maduro. And Venezuela, they're poisoning America. They're aligned with Hezbollah. Iran vowed to come to their aid just yesterday. So I applaud President Trump of trying to bring down this narrow-terrorist state in Venezuela run by Maduro. They're bad news. They did seize our assets in 1976. They are flooding our country with cocaine. They're aligned with international terrorist organizations. I support the idea of standing up to Maduro, and I want him to go. I am all in the camp for regime change, and I'd like to see the people of Venezuela be able to elect a new leader that would not only be good for them, but good for the region and good for the United States. It would be good for the United States because a lot of Venezuelans would go back home. I've talked about that before. We have many Venezuelans who are friends of ours in Panama and in Colombia, and places like that, and a lot of them say we would gladly go back to Venezuela once Maduro is gone. Now, Kristi Noem is the Secretary of Homeland Security, and she's trying to encourage Venezuelans to go back home to the point that they are now offering, get this, $3,000 cash for any migrant who will go back to Venezuela. Take a listen. Greater than, well, it's home for the holiday season. So, not only are we returning those kiddos back to their families that Biden lost, we also are saying that if you voluntarily want to go home now to your country, if you're in this United States of America, illegally, we will give you $3,000 through the holidays to send you home. We'll buy you a ticket, give you $3,000 to go home. And that includes people that have not been detained, maybe have interacted with us, are detained, and don't have criminal charges against them. Yeah, raise your hand. We'll help you get home. We'll facilitate it. And you might get the chance to come back to this country the right way someday. If you wait until we interdict you and detain you and arrest you and have to deport you ourselves, you'll never get the chance to come back. So, go on the CBP Home app and get the information, and we'll make sure you get home in time for Christmas. Greater than now, you might say, oh my goodness, what is she doing? $3,000 cash. I know of plenty of Americans who would take $3,000 cash and leave themselves and go to some other country. But I mean, why in the world is the U.S. government offering so much money for migrants to pick up and leave that are here illegally? We will pay you to turn around and go back home. Well, here's why. Because if you look at a report from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, they found out, they did a landmark study, found out that every migrant family who's in the United States illegally costs the U.S. government approximately $66,000 a year. $66,000 each year in additional schooling needs, additional policing, additional medical things. These people go to the hospital, we have to treat them. We can't just let them die on the floor and they don't pay, okay? So, it's so much cheaper in the long run for us we could offer 10 grand for people to leave and it would still be cheaper. 10 grand on a first-class plane ticket back to your home. But let's hope that a lot of people are going to take the government up on that. The money is coming from the U.S. taxpayer, coming from the U.S. federal government. And so yes, it is definitely cheaper in the long run. Now I want to go back to these tankers because then I'm going to talk about other kind of the nexus here with Iran and everything and why this is about more than just a Venezuela. Now this is the tanker that they're apparently following right now, that they're trying to board at the moment. And what you can see here is this thing left Iran and then it started to spoof its signal, so that the tanker was broadcasting that it was in one place, when it was actually spotted in another place. And that we're talking about more than halfway across the Atlantic. So it spoofs its GPS signal to hide from authorities. Well, that's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to hide from the US Navy because we've got a lot of we've got a tremendous amount of assets in the region. Now, some pundits I saw said that the US Navy has about 30% of all of its assets in the Western Hemisphere now for the first time in pretty much forever. That's not been a thing that you've seen ever in my lifetime, so that is far more than we need to hit some drug boats. It's even far more than we need to strike at some drug targets in Venezuela. If we decide to strike on land, it is for something much bigger than